There's another SpongeBob episode that is very important that I'd like to talk about today. The episode takes place on and is titled Valentine's Day. And though there are many aspects of the episode that are exceptional in their own right, there is an important lesson to be learned that I would like to prioritize talking about today. So without further ado, let's get into the episode and topic at hand. The episode opens with SpongeBob cheerfully giving Valentine's gifts to all of his friends, as well as some strangers, as we'll come to find out later. After some time of doing that, he meets with Sandy to review their plan to give Patrick the greatest, bestest, most fantabulous present ever, in SpongeBob's words. SpongeBob then meets with Patrick to tell him that he has a surprise for him, but despite Patrick's will to have the surprise spoiled for him, SpongeBob says that he'll just have to wait. So they arrive at the Valentine's Day carnival, to which Patrick then begins guessing or assuming what the surprise is. He first thinks it's the carnival itself, then a quarter, some cotton candy, a person, among many other things, all of his guesses being wrong. After some time, they end up on the Ferris wheel, where they wait in eager anticipation for the big surprise. SpongeBob begins to get abundantly anxious as Sandy is still fighting off the attack of the chocolate-eating scallops, which has caused her to be late in arrival with the Valentine gift. Patrick's excitement and great anticipation is now apparent to the entire park, as he can no longer help himself but to bounce up and down, literally causing the entire Ferris wheel to do the same. But with great reluctance, eventually SpongeBob opted to just give Patrick a handshake as his present, instead of simply telling him that the gift was going to arrive later than expected, which perplexed me. Maybe SpongeBob thought the balloon would end up getting completely eaten after all, so he didn't want to get Patrick's hopes up, only for him to be more so disappointed when the plan ultimately fell through. I'm still not sure, but in any case, Patrick doesn't hide his disappointment after receiving his friendly handshake as a Valentine gift. And not just any handshake. In his mind, this was the greatest gift ever that SpongeBob had previously talked up. After hopping off the Ferris wheel, both SpongeBob and Patrick then explore the many attractions of the park. Throughout all of this, SpongeBob is having a blast, as they say, while Patrick is still visibly disappointed and downcast. Eventually, they both wind up on a bench to chill out for a bit, to which Patrick then takes the opportunity to begin to open up to SpongeBob and express his thoughts after some time of thinking. But as he does this, fish after fish interrupt him in order to thank SpongeBob for the gifts they had received from him. Patrick first brushes it off, but as it happens again and again, not only the interrupting, but also the reminder that his best friend got him a handshake while he gave strangers bikes and chocolates, amongst other things. Patrick's temper then rises continuously, till it hits a boiling point, and, well, boils over, you could say. Then unfolds Patrick's Valentine rampage. He begins by literally throwing the stranger that most previously had interrupted him, and then exclaims, "Patrick needs love too!" He goes on to terrorize the entire carnival, from eating a little girl's lollipop and ripping some guy's costume off. He goes on to essentially corner the fish, as well as SpongeBob, at the carnival in order to make them pay. Fortunately for all of them, Sandy arrives just in time with the chocolate hot air balloon, to which Patrick is very pleased to receive. He then accidentally blows it up, and then, in a very content tone, states, "Oh, SpongeBob, you didn't have to give me anything." So then, I'm sure the misstep or mistake on Patrick's part is quite obvious here. His Valentine rampage, as it's been called. But it should be pointed out that in regards to Patrick's initial approach to the situation that he found himself in, that of being dispirited due to his lackluster Valentine gift, he actually was doing very well at first. He was certainly upset, and it showed, but within the emotion, he did some introspection. He then refrained from lashing out in anger, and was even more so able to after thinking before acting. As he proceeded to open up to SpongeBob, it was only as he kept getting interrupted by strangers that had received some more exciting gifts than him that he reached, as I said, his boiling point. So then the main lesson or takeaway from this is to not lash out in anger, and to do whatever you can to not only not contribute to an individual doing so, but also try your best to help others refrain from doing so if you see a situation headed south. For in anger, you will most likely take action that is uncharacteristic, like with Patrick eating the girl's lollipop amongst all the other things he did. And your choices may very well be detrimental overall. A fool always loses his temper, but a wise man holds it back. In anger, we should refrain both from speech and action. Quite often, the anger or indignance that you feel towards an undesirable situation is very much justified, but the outburst isn't. The irony is, the perpetrator of an outburst not only risks hurting others, particularly those he loves, but he usually winds up completely walking back and regretting everything he did and said within the outburst. There are countless examples of this being the case, both in reality as well as in fictional stories like this one. One that comes to mind is Shrek 4. In the party scene of the movie, it's clear that Shrek was at his boiling point. He then did his famous ogre roar, which actually pleased the crowd, and that was fortunate for Shrek. He could have just left it at that, having got some of the pent-up frustration out. But he then completely destroyed his kid's birthday cake. Like I mentioned before, in this case, his anger was justified, and you can watch the movie to see why, to see the context on that. But that said, his outburst was anything but. So you may be wondering what the full solution is then. If lashing out in anger isn't right, then what should I do when I feel angry? Surely you're not recommending that I do nothing. Well, not exactly. According to a video I watched called Why Anger is Not Your Ally by Geeky Stoics, some psychologists refer to anger as a substitute emotion, as it protects you from an injury, weakness, or an otherwise perceived undesirable emotion. This information alone should drive you to no longer fall prey to anger anymore, difficult as it may be at first. For when we revert to anger, we literally are letting it steal away our true emotion and thoughts towards a specific issue or circumstance. There was a comment on that video that is worth mentioning. It said, Leonardo, leader of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, once said, "The funny thing about anger is it can cause you to lose sight of everything." And that's certainly true. So then the solution is to first compose yourself. And then take a deep breath in order to alleviate stress. Then stop and think. Take some time for introspection. Let anger and any emotion lead you to inquiry, not hostile and emotional reaction. Even if that means just sitting silently for a moment to process everything, you'll be surprised at what a better outcome, what better decisions you will make when you first just stop and think and even pray. Tremble and do not sin. Meditate in your heart upon your bed and be still. The heart of the righteous ponders how to answer, but the mouth of the wicked pours out evil things. So, as God's own chosen people who are holy, set apart, sanctified for his purpose, and well beloved by God himself, put on a heart of compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience, which has the power to endure whatever injustice or unpleasantness comes with good temper. Even a fool, when he keeps silent, is considered wise. When he closes his lips, he is considered prudent. Patience is not passive. On the contrary, it is concentrated strength. All this being said, there is a certain caveat that is worth mentioning and clarifying. Jordan Peterson talks about the idea of integrated anger. I'd also call it calculated or tamed anger. Peterson clarifies that anger that is behind you, or behind your cause, as in you are using it, not anger using you. It is no longer purely anger, but determination. I guess the idea then is to turn your anger into anything useful, or replace it rather, instead of, once again, anger replacing the true emotion. In these specific cases where your use of anger, or again, the true underlying emotion, is for a good cause, it is known as righteous anger. For example, if someone was attacking my sibling, or was about to, It's not only justified for me to use my anger to defend my sibling, it would also be required of me. And of course, I can't neglect to mention the example of Jesus flipping the tables in the temple in Matthew 21, verse 12 through 13, or Mark 11, verse 15 through 18. Once again, this was an example of righteous anger. The people turned what was supposed to be a holy place into a marketplace. The important clarifying question to this idea of righteous anger is, when is it no longer righteous? And it's a good question. It makes me think of the recent Scream movies, actually. Yeah, I bet you didn't see that coming. Maybe you did. At any rate, like with all of the films, once it is figured out who Ghostface is, the protagonists attempt to kill him. And fair enough, I mean, that's self-defense in most respects. But as I said, in the more recent films, the quote-unquote protagonists not only try to kill Ghostface, but they go out of their way to be very evil about it. So as to not go into detail, I'll just say that they go too far. All that to say, the idea of righteous anger and when it becomes something other than that is very convoluted, and I only can say so much confidently about the topic. But I'd venture to say that if you practice self-control and get good at it, it will probably be more so distinguishable when using any anger you have about a given situation is justified and righteous or not. That's all just a guess, but what I can recommend with much confidence is practice self-control. Now, there may still be a hang-up of sorts or something that is just worth clarifying anyway, though the idea of this video and the lesson within is primarily to recommend self-control in the heat of the moment within any given conflict. Depending on the scenario, it may take more than that in the long term to fully resolve any given issue. For example, if it's an issue with a specific individual, then you may need to just have a clarifying conversation with them at some point. But in regards to handling your own frustrations and emotions about an issue, there are a few therapeutic methods you can try. For one, you can journal, just write down your thoughts, things that not only upset you, but that are important to you in general. You can also go to the gym. Lifting weights is not only healthy for you, but it is therapeutic as well. And of course, pray. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and pleading with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. Be angry, and yet do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger. Take that verse as you will, because I'm still trying to fully understand what sin in this context would be in regards to anger. But with that said, it pretty clearly sounds like to me that anger is something we all have dealt with and will deal with, but nonetheless, don't let it consume you and lead you into sin. Choices made in anger cannot be undone. Kill your anger before it kills you. And that is true, and it's certainly good advice. But whenever you find yourself on the receiving end of someone's choices made in anger, also remember, hatred stirs up strife, but love covers all offenses. Last but not least, if the ruler's temper rises against you, do not abandon your position, because composure allays great offenses. So then, to reiterate the point in an understandable way and kind of wrap the whole thing together, practice self-control. Though any indignance or anger you may feel or have towards a situation may be very well justified, don't lash out in anger. For choices made in anger are usually wrong choices that you end up regretting, but you can't take back. Anger may in fact be a substitute for how you actually feel. So rather than lashing out, compose yourself, breathe deep, and inquire of yourself your true thoughts on the situation. Ask why you feel the way you do, then respond appropriately, which may be a rather abrasive response depending on the scenario. More on that topic in a previous video. And later on, having done all that, if you still feel indignant, then adopt the therapeutic methods I mentioned. And as a side note, do all of this anyway. Lift some heavy weights, journal, write down your thoughts, and most importantly, pray, and you'll be well on your way. You like that it rhymed? I guess the bottom line is, in anger, respond with inquiry, not fury. As I mentioned, I talked about the idea of being abrasive and whether or not it is useful or beneficial or even right in a recent video, so do check that one out. If you're interested, it'll be in the description. If you did enjoy this video and support my message, understand that my main inspiration is the Bible. If you don't know the Lord, there's no better time to begin a relationship with Him than now, and it's actually a simple formula. Romans 10 verse 9 says that if you confess with your mouth Jesus as Lord and believe in your heart that God raised Him from the dead, you will be saved. So I highly recommend that you do so. Thank you so much for watching. I sincerely hope that this helps you, so apply it today or whenever and wherever applicable. Remember to treat others the way that you want to be treated, and to love God and love your neighbor, and therefore you will continue to be a good person. Thank you for watching, and as always, it's an honor.